the topic that we're going to discuss is the momentum, the impulse, and conservation of momentum. So, the first question that I have here is, if two of your friends weighs 200 pounds and the other one weighs 100 pounds are running towards you at the same speed, so who is more difficult to stop? Sabi dyan sa question ay may dalawang kaibigan, yung isa ay 200 pounds at yung isa ay 100 pounds. Tapos tumatakbo siya papunta sa'yo. Sino kaya ang mahirap pigilan? Yung 200 o yung 100? Pero the same speed lang yung takbo nila.
Yung 200 po.
Yes, naka-off cam ka.
Yung 200 po, sir.
O, bakit po?
Kasi po mas mabigat po siya eh. Pag yung takbo po nung ano, kahit parehas po sila, basta po mas mabigat ka, mas mahirap pong tumigil. Kasi matutulak pa po ikaw eh.
Okay, so that's your idea. So according to Angelito, it's 200 pounds kasi mas mabigat daw. As you notice, if we're going to relate in our previous lesson, regarding with the force is equal to mass and the acceleration, diba? Mas mahirap or mas mabigat yung force kapag mas mabigat yung mass. It's the same with the acceleration. Basta pares nila ng acceleration tapos mabigat yung mass, mas mabigat yung force na na kailangan to stop. So with that, let us watch this video to understand about to have the overview about our lesson.
Professor Dave here. Let's talk about impulse and momentum.
He knows a lot about the science stuff. Professor Dave explains.
In chemistry, we learned about the conservation of matter. Here in physics, we learned about the conservation of energy. These concepts can be extended to formulate another law, and that is the law of conservation of momentum. Momentum is a term we may be familiar with, but once again, we must learn the rigorous definitions of these words. And linear momentum is defined as mass times velocity, which will be represented by the letter P. Momentum is a vector quantity, as it involves a velocity vector being multiplied by the scalar value of the object's mass. This means momentum will be expressed with SI units of kilogram meters per second. In this case, our everyday use of the word is fairly accurate, and we might say that as a ball rolls down a hill, it will gather momentum. This is true because its velocity will increase as the force of gravity accelerates it towards the ground. The more momentum the ball gathers, the more difficult it will be to bring it to a stop, and an object in motion can therefore have a larger momentum by virtue of being more massive, like a huge boulder, or also by moving at high velocity, like a tiny hailstone or meteorite falling from the sky. If we consider a car in motion, it too will have a momentum equal to mass times velocity, and if you slam on the brakes to avoid a collision, the car will skid a certain distance, because a force must be applied over some duration of time to bring a moving object to rest. The heavier the car and the faster it was moving, the greater this factor will be. A small force acting over a long time could do it, like if you take your foot off the gas and let the friction from the road slowly stop the car. Or a large force acting over a short time could do it, like firmly applying the brakes to the tires. The force that is applied multiplied by the duration of time that it is applied is called the impulse, which will be measured in Newton seconds. The relationship between impulse and momentum is summarized in the impulse-momentum theorem. It states that the impulse, F delta t, is equal to the change in momentum, or delta p, which can also be expressed as mv final minus mv initial. So if you apply some force to push an object for some duration of time, that object will gain a proportional amount of momentum. If an object loses momentum, it must be imparting some force to something else over some time period. Just as the work-energy theorem describes conservation of mechanical energy, the impulse-momentum theorem describes conservation of linear momentum. Another ramification of this theorem is that the force imparted on a moving object when it strikes some surface will be very large if the impact is instantaneous, and much less if the impact involves some time duration. If you fall off your roof onto the ground, it will hurt, But if you fall onto a trampoline, it won't be as bad because the change in momentum imparted on your body, instead of happening instantly, will be delivered over the entire duration of your contact with the trampoline surface as it stretches from the force of your fall. This is also why baseball players are taught to swing through the ball rather than stopping the swing upon impact, because if contact is maintained between the bat and the ball for as long as possible, the maximum possible force will be imparted upon the ball. In the case of an object striking another object, total momentum will be conserved through the collision, and the sum of the momenta of the two objects will be the same before and after the collision. The easiest example of this concept involves balls on a pool table. We will often observe that one ball has momentum while the other does not, and after the collision, the first ball has stopped and all of its momentum has been imparted onto the other ball. This type of scenario illustrates conservation of momentum.
There is a momentum. So momentum is a factor that tends to keep moving continuously at a certain velocity. So this factor are their mass and velocity, which give the physical quantity of P is equal to mv. So P is the momentum, the M is for the mass, and the V is for the velocity. Have you heard diba, sa yung news doon sa Enchanted Kingdom, yung space shuttle na nag-i-stuck doon sa taas? So the reason why kung bakit siya nag-i-stuck is kulang yung kanyang momentum. Although meron siyang kapag sinabi natin yung momentum, meron siyang mass at meron din dapat siyang velocity. So I think the velocity, hindi siya medyo kulang ata ng velocity yon or something kulang sa mass. Baka kasi kukunti yung mga nakasakay doon sa sa cart during that time. Tapos tumitigil siya sa loop kasi kapag nag-turn ka dapat sa loop, dapat mas malakas dapat yung, or mas mabilis dapat yung velocity to turn into the loop. So hindi siya nag-i-stuck siya doon kasi that's something may kulang sa mass or may kulang sa velocity. So kapag may kulang doon sa dalawang factor na yun, kulang siya ng momentum. So yun yung tinatawag na, that's the reason kung bakit hindi tumitigil yung cart ng Enchanted Kingdom sa Space Shuttle. So linear momentum, sabi dito, is the object tends to move in a straight line. So it has ang example ng linear momentum, yung kanina, yung car, which is tumatakbo siya sa driveway, sa daan pala, tapos it will stop. So, the unit for the linear momentum is the kilogram times meter per second. So, tandaan. Then, let's have the example of the linear momentum. So, what is the momentum of the 22 kilogram cart which travel with a velocity of 1.2 meter per second to the right? So, if to the left, that will be a negative. Kaso to the right tayo. So, kaya magkakaroon ka ng positive. So, let's identify the given in this problem. The given that we'll have here is the mass, which is 22 kilogram, and the velocity is equal to 1.2 meter per second. So, ang hinahanap, so we need to find for the momentum. So, yan, which is P. So, solution, kanan tayo ng P is equal to mv. O, paki-compute po. So, magkakaroon tayo ng 22 multiplied by 1.2. So, therefore, your momentum is equal to what? Yes, Pearl.
Ano po? 26.4 kilogram meter per second.
So, the answer that we'll have is 26.4 kilogram times meter per seconds. So, that is the momentum of the car, of the grocery cart traveling to the right with a mass of 22 kilogram and the velocity of 1.2 meter per seconds. Question? Wala naman? Noe, asa may kapatid mo? Okay. How's work? Next, so we will have here a 2,500 kilogram bus from Laguna moves at 25 meter per second to Makati. So what is the momentum of the bus? So let's identify the given. So Del Mundo. Various. Diba Danyo? Kabat Del Mundo na ngayon? Given. What's the given? Marius, kukunin ka na ata ng belief dyan.
Mass was 2,500.
So, the mass is equal to 2,500 kilogram. What else? Loyola.
Yung velocity po, 25.
So, velocity is 25 meter per second. So, again, the question is momentum. So, we need to find for P. So, solution, then P is equal to mv. So, P is equal to, the mass is 2,500 and the velocity is equal to 25. So, what will be the answer, Okado?
62,500 po.
So it will be 62,500 kilogram times meter per seconds. So from Laguna to Makati. So that is the momentum of the bus. Masyadong malaki yung momentum ng bus. Question? Nagets naman po ba? Okay, so changing an object's momentum. So momentum of the object change if its velocity and or its mass changes. So we can find these changes on momentum by writing Newton's second law of motion. So which is the F is equal to ma, where m is the mass and a is the acceleration. We have here the formula. Sabi dito, you can have change in mass. So therefore, you can have change in velocity over the change in time. So, and your a is equal to change in that is the value of your acceleration, that is change in velocity over the change in time. So you can have the force is mass times the velocity, mass times the change in velocity over the change in time. Or you can have your force is the momentum over change in time. And since the mass and mass multiplied by the change in velocity is equal to the change in momentum, so they are the same. So if the force multiplied by the change in time is equal to the change in velocity, this is called what we call the impulse momentum theorem. Pag daw sila ay equal. Or you can have the formula of F, the force times the change in time is equal to the mass times the final velocity minus the initial velocity. So ano nga ba yung impulse? So impulse is a term that quantifies the overall effect of the force acting over the time. So yung impulse is ito yung di ba, F, ito yung F change in T. The force multiply by the change in time. So ito yung kunwari nagtulak ka ng isang bagay during that time, ibig sabihin meron doon impulse na tinatawag kasi it's a force that act during that time. So the equation states that the net external force applied to the object for the certain time interval, that is the change in time, will cause the change in object's momentum equal to the product of the net force and the time interval. In short, that's called the impulse. So the impulse has the formula of I is equal to the force times the change in time, or Ft, or I is equal to change in momentum. Or I is equal to mass times the change in velocity. So, tatlo yung formula ng impulse. It can be force times the time, or is equal to the change in momentum. Yung momentum which has the formula of mv. So, ayun po yan. Ito, related sila dalawa. Okay. So, let's have the example. Nakuha po ba yung mga formula? Tingnan. Okay, example we have here, Fernando Jose hits a 0.5 kilogram gold ball. So again, Fernando Jose hits a 0.5 kilogram gold ball, giving its a speed of 65 meter per second. So what is the impulse that he impart to the ball? So ayan. So given natin, dito, we will have the mass which is equal to 0.05 kilogram. Then the speed is referred to the velocity, kasi meron siyang meter per second. So therefore, this is change in V. Find I. So solution. So the solution that we can have here is the I is equal to M and V, which is equal to the change in P or the momentum, kasi MV is equal to the momentum. So if we're going to solve, your mass is equal to 0.05 multiplied by 65. So therefore, what will be the I? Yes, Lasa.
3.25 po.
So this will be 3.25 kilogram times meter per seconds. Question? Okay, so let's have now another example. So assume that the 0.15 kilogram baseball both hits and leaves a ball bat a speed of 14 meter per second. So nakalagay dito yung tinamaan, tapos pagka tama ay tumalbog siya dun sa bat. So that is leaves. Or imagine nyo na naglaro naman kayo talaga siguro ng baseball ng mga bata kayo pa. So, elementary. So, di ba ang baseball ay hinahagis, tapos tatamaan yung bola. Pagkatama ng bola, ay tumatalsik yung bola ulit. So, it has the 40 meter per seconds. And it contacts for 10 seconds only. So, the question is, what average force does the bat exert on the ball during this contact? So, the given in our problem, we can have the mass, which is equal to 0.15 kilogram. And do we have the initial and the final velocity? Yes or no? What do you think? Meron kaya tayong initial and final velocity in this problem? Sumagot. A wild guess, yes or no? Do we have initial? Do we have the final velocity? a speed of 40 meter per second. Tapos nakalagay daw hits and leaps. Yes, meron tayo. Okay, meron tayo. So, the initial velocity, that is the hits. So, meron tayong PI, which is 40 meter per seconds. Now, we have the VF, the final velocity. That is the yung leaves o yung mali. Yung pagkatama ay tumalsik ulit. So, that is negative 40 meter per seconds. Bakit siya ay negative? Kasi imagine, ito yung bola, kasi ito yung bat. Imagine nyo na, ano bat yan? Basta stick. Yan. Bakit yung drawing? Yan na lang. Yung bola papunta dito. That is the initial velocity 40 meter per seconds. Pagkatama doon sa stick, siya ay bumalik, nag-rebound. So therefore, papunta ulit siya dito. That is negative 40 meter per seconds. Kasi bumalik siya doon sa pinanggalingan niya. Sana all. Okay, so we have here the next problem is the T. The given in the problem, which is 10 seconds. 10 seconds ba to? Wait lang. Okay. That will be 10 seconds. Okay. So, the solution, ang pinapahanap dito is the what average force does. So, the force ang hinahanap natin. So, find F, force. Now, ano yung formula natin in force? Balikan natin yung mga formula natin dito. To find for the force, since meron tayong final velocity at saka initial velocity, so ito yung gagamitin natin. Yan. So, we can have F times T is equal to small solution. Meron tayong F change in time is equal to change in P, where your P is equal to the mass times the final velocity minus the initial velocity. Check natin. F. Okay, ito yan. So, we're finding for the F. So therefore, we need to divide this by T, or change in time, or T itself. So magkakaroon tayo ng F is equal to M times the VF minus VI over T, or change in time. Parehas din naman yun. So, yung mass natin ay 0.15 times our final velocity is negative 40 minus the initial velocity is 40 over 10. Now, what will be the force? Paki-compute. So, nakaroon tayo ng 0.15 multiplied by negative 80. Then, yung answer will be divided by 10. Yes, Okado.
Negative 1.2 po.
So you can have negative 1.2. What is the unit? Force. The unit of force is
Kilogram po.
kilogram. N. Newton. Pakibaba ng kamay, baka mangalay. Okay, so that is kilogram over kilogram meter per seconds over time na time. Basta N yun. At nakalimutan ko yung exact yung value ng Newton. Just check nyo na lang sa ating previous. So, that is negative 1.2. Bakit siya, yung force ay negative 1.2? Kasi siya ay ano? Anyone guess? Bakit siya negative 1.2? Ang force natin ay negative 1.2. Kasi siya ay pabalik. Bakit? Kasi ba the average force does, ang hinahanap dito ay the average force that the bat exerts during the contact. Yung nag-swing, di ba yung bat from here, tapos yan, papunta dito yung bola, magsiswing siya papunta dito para i-contact niya yung ball sa part nito. So, papunta siya sa left part. Kaya siya ay negative 1.2 Newton. Let's have the conservation of momentum. Practice question again. So, we will have here the what will happen if two billiard balls collide? When we say collides, ito yung nagbanggaan. So, what happened if the track collides with tricycle? So, let's have first the number 1. Ano daw mangyayari kapag ang billiard balls ay tama? Any opinion? Yung kagaya na nasa video kanina, ano nangyari doon? Yes, dili lang.
Mag-move po yung maalin po dun sa dalawang bola na nag-collide.
Okay, so ibig sabihin, kunwari, dalawang bola yung magkakasalubong sila. So, pag nagtama sila, pareha sila kunwari, yung isa ay going to the right, tapos yung isa ay going to the left. Pag nag-collide sila sa center, sila ay mag-rebound. So, yung isa babalik sa kanan, yung isa ay babalik sa kaliwa. So, that is what happened. Kapag yung dalawa ay bola ay parehas na tumatakbo. Pero kung ang isang bola ay hindi pa tumatakbo, kagaya ng dito sa number 2, what happened if the track collide with tricycle? Ano kaya mangyayari?
Madadala po ng truck yung tricycle kasi mas mabigat po siya. Or
Okay. So, madadala ng truck yung tricycle kapag sila ay nag-collide. Kasi, based on sabi ni Angelito, siya ay mas mabigat kasi yung truck kaysa sa tricycle. So, that is the really happening kapag nagkakaroon ng accident sa daan. So, talaga masisira yung tricycle at natitira yung matibay. So, we will have here the collision. Collision, of course, when an object strikes another. So, that is based on the picture. Yan yung two cars. So, kapag nagbangga sila, syempre, sisira yung kanilang unahan. Then, we have kinds of collision. Number 1 is the elastic collision. So, two bodies hit each other and rebound. So, ito yan. Before, yung color green going to the right while yung color purple or violet is going to the left. So, after collision, sabihin natin sila ay parehas ng mass. Even though, sa illustration, mas malaking letter A kaysa sa letter B. Sabihin natin na itong color green ay parang basketball ball. Tapos yung color violet ay sabihin natin ito ay medyo maliit na yung bowling ball. So, after collision, yung letter A is bumalik siya doon sa left. While yung letter B, bumalik siya doon sa to the right. So, ito yung tinatawag nating ito yung tinatawag nating sa real life. Ito yung pinagtagpo, ngunit hindi pinagtadhana. Kasi, nagtagpo lang sila, pero sila ay naghiwalay din. Diba? Yan po yan. So, the next is the inelastic collision. In the inelastic collision, after hitting each other, the bodies stick together and begin to move as one. So, yung before, yung red, papunta siya dun sa kay green. Tapos, after collision, sila ay yung red ay nag-stick na doon sa color green. So ito yung tinatawag na pinagtagpo at itinadhana kasi sila sa huli. Yan. Relate? Okay. We have the law of conservation of momentum. Gagamitin natin yan. So, in the law of conservation of momentum, yung m sub 1 is the mass of the first object. The m sub 2 is the mass of the second object. The v sub 1, the velocity before collision of the first object. The v sub 2 is the velocity before collision of the second object. V sub 1 prime, velocity after collision of the first object, and v sub 2 prime, velocity after collision of the second object. So, normally, yung ginagamit natin dito is kung nasa taas the momentum. Yung kinematics energy ay hindi masyado. Pero sometimes, gagamitin din natin yan. I think later on the lesson part. Ito lang kung nasa finals yun. Pero normally, we have the m sub 1 times v sub 1 plus m sub 2 times v sub 2 is equal to the m sub 1 v sub 1 prime after collision of the first object and the mass times the v sub 2 prime. You have to reminder na itong mass na to at saka itong mass na to ay parehas lang. Yung mass na nasa left tapos yung mass na nasa right ay parehas lang sila. Itong mass na nasa yung mass 2 at saka yung mass 2 dito sa right ay parehas lang sila. Din po yan. So, itong velocity lang ang hindi masyadong parehas kasi may inelastic at meron tayong elastic collision. So, ito yung tandaan na formula. Okay na? Kopya mo na yung formula. Okay, so let's have the example. So, example natin dito is 0.2 kilogram ball moving to the right at 0.25 meter per second. Make an elastic head on collision with 0.4 kilogram ball moving to the left at 0.15 meter seconds. After the collision, the smaller balls moves to the left at 0.16 meter per seconds. What is the velocity of the 0.4 after the collision? So, in this case, yung isa ay going to the right. Ito going to the right. Tapos yung isa, 0.4 going to the left. So, yung mass ng isa, yung mass ng isa ay 0.02. Tapos itong mass ng isa ay 0.04. So, after nilang mag-collide dito sa gitna, so after collision, itong isa, sa part na to, yung isa ay bumalik papunta dito, while yung isa ay bumalik papunta dito. So, after collision moves 0.16 meter per second, tapos yung isa ang hinahanap natin kung gaano daw kalaki yung kanyang movement, yung velocity niya ng 0.04. Now, in this case, meron tayong givens. Yung m sub 1 natin is equal to 0.02 kilogram. Yung m sub 2 is equal to 0.04 kilogram. The v sub 1 is equal to 0. Ito na lang natin ilagay sa tapat niya. Mas madali ma-identify. The v sub 1 is equal to 0.25 meter per seconds. And v sub 2 is negative 0.15 meter per second. So, bakit siya negative? Kasi siya ay papunta sa left. That's why it's negative 0.15. Next, the b sub 1 prime is equal to b sub 1 prime natin ay negative 0.16 meter per second. Bakit siya negative? Kasi itong isa ay papunta sa right, that will be take as positive. Tapos nung nag-rebound siya, that will be a negative. So positive papuntang negative. Tapos yung isa negative, it will be now positive. Papunta siya sa positive. So ang hinahanap natin is the b sub 2 prime. So find b sub 2 prime. So, magkakaroon tayo dito ng from the equation. Solution natin. So, solution. Yung formula natin is the m sub 1, p sub 1, plus m sub 2, p sub 2 is equal to m sub 1, p sub 1 prime, plus m sub 2, p sub 2 prime. Okay? Ayan. Ang gagawin natin dyan is ating ipa-plug in lang sa ating formula. Or, kung gusto mo naman, ay i-ano mo na siya, i-manipulate mo na yung formula. Itong part na to, yung m sub 1 at saka b sub 1 ay ating ilipat dito. Ayan. Kung ililipat natin siya, kakaroon tayo ng m sub 2 b sub 2 prime is equal to m sub 1 b sub 1 plus m sub 2 b sub 2 minus m sub 1 b sub 1 prime. Nakuha ba kung bakit naging ganon? Nilipat natin yung nasa right side papunta doon sa left side kaya siya naging negative m sub 1 b sub 1 prime. Then we're finding for the b sub 2. So, finding for the b sub 2. So, we have to divide by m sub 2, m sub 2. So, cancel out. So, meron na tayo b sub 2 is equal to m sub 1, b sub 1, plus m sub 2, b sub 2, minus m sub 1, b sub 1 prime over, prime pala yung nahanap natin, over m sub 2. So, ito na yung ating formula. Then, we can now find for the b sub 2 prime is equal to what is the mass 1. The mass 1 is 0.02. So, 0.02. What is the v1? 0.25 plus the m sub 2 is 0.04 multiplied by its velocity. It's negative 0.15. So, sundan po ba? Next, medyo mahaba to ha. Minus the m sub 1 is still 0.02 multiplied by the m sub 1 prime. M sub 1 prime is negative 0.16 all over yung m sub 2 natin which is 0.04. Yan. Let us simplify. Yan. So, meron tayo dito na b sub 2 prime is equal to isa-isahin natin. We can have 0.2 times 0.25. 0.02 times 0.25. What will be the answer? Okay, kopya mo na nga. Yan na tayo. Sundan ba? Nasundan? Paano nangyari yan? Question? Clarification? Okay pa naman tayo dyan. Okay, let's have the 0.02 multiplied by 0.25. What is the answer? 0. Ito muna. Anyone?
0.005 po.
Okay, so you can have 0.005 plus. Ito naman. Hindi na siya plus. It's minus na. Kasi negative. So, minus. Kana 0.04 multiplied by 0.15 or negative 0.15. What will be the answer? Wala nang calculate. Talaga naman. Lasa, what is the answer? 0.04 multiplied by negative 15. Negative 0.15. Pakicalculate nga. Pearl sa'yo yung 0.02.
Sir?
At saka
Sir, bakit
sa'yo
po
to, Yes,
iba po
Okado.
yung lumabas sa akin, sir? Ganito po yung lumabas.
Sir, sa akin din po.
Nung minultiply yung 0.02 at saka 0.25,
Ba?
yung minultiply, after multiply ng 0.02 at saka 0.25,
Opo.
patingin nga ulit,
Wait lang.
may fraction, parang ganon. Hindi ko makita.
I-type ko na lang, sir. I-chat ko na
Sige,
lang
sige.
po.
Sige.
Mga scientific notation, sir.
Opo,
Kasi,
ganun. Opo.
pindutin nyo yung, ano ba pinipindot dyan? Pasensya na kung may narinig kayo kaiba, hindi ko control yun. Sa kapitbahay yun. Pindutin nyo yung ENG. Shift ENG. Shift ENG. Ano? Nag-work?
Ganun pa din po.
Ano nakalagay? 1 5 times times 10
Opo.
to the
Negative 3.
negative 3. Ibig sabihin yan, nag-aaral naman tayo ng scientific notation. Pwede din naman yan, 5 times 10 to the negative 3. Or you can have, since nag-scientific notation naman tayo nung prelim, i-move nyo na lang siya para maging decimal. Move thrice to the left para maging 0.005 siya. Okay? Or try mo ulit pindutin yung ENG. Yung ENG lang. Kung magsi 0.05 siya. Hindi pa din. Ganun pa din.
Ganun pa rin po.
Pindutin mo yung S tapos D. May S, di ba dyan?
Wala po, sir.
FD.
Ay, first.
Yan.
Ganun pa rin po.
Pwede yan. Kaya mo na. Ay, calculator. Pwede naman yung 5 times 10 to the negative 3. Parehas lang tayo makuha ng sagot ko. Or you can have 0.005. Next, 0.04 times 0.15. Answer lasa. Nawala na silang dalawa. Loyola, may answer ka ba? Lasa. What's the answer? 0 point? Yes, Tiris. What's your answer?
Negative 0.006 po.
Okay, so you can have negative 0.006 or you can have negative 6 times 10 to the negative 3 pa din siya. Yun na sa ibang calculator. Then, what's the answer for as assigned? It's positive.
Positive po.
Oo, kasi negative times negative na yun, hindi positive na.
Ay, negative. Negative pala yung 0.02.
Oo. Hindi parehas na din nasagot yan. 0 point?
Wait lang po. 0.0032. 0.0032.
Okay, so you can have 0.0032 or in your calculator, pwede din tayong 3.2 times 10, 1 times 10 to the negative 3 in the other calculator. So, divided by 0.04. Now, simplify natin yung b sub 2, yung numerator muna. So, magkakaroon tayo dito na 0.005 minus 0.006 plus 0.0032. Now, Queenie, yung kagaya na kay Queenie, simplify mo lang yun kung ano yung nakuha ng calculator mo. Kung may times 10 to the something, i-type mo lang yun. Parehas lang yung makukuha natin dyan. What will be the simplification of the numerator? Simplify answer. Nathan?
Sir, yung final answer po.
Answer hindi. Numerator muna.
Wait lang, sir. Hindi ka pa po na.
Sige. Yung final answer na. Kung meron ka, pwede din naman yan.
0.055.
0.055. The final answer na meron tayo na makukuha natin is 0.055 meter per seconds. Or, if you will round it off into 2 decimal places, b sub 2 prime is equal to 0.06 meter per seconds. On your calculator, kung gumamit kayo ng yung sa may scientific notation, this will be 6 times 10 to the 1 to negative 2 meter per seconds. Do you have the same answer, Queenie? 0.6 times 10?
Opo,
6
sir.
times 10. Okay, yan po yun. Question? Clarification? Naman? Can we move to the next example? Okay, next example that we'll have here is a cue ball moving at 1.5 meter per second strike and 8 ball at rest. So, cue ball and 8 ball. Sa ano tayo ngayon? Billiard. Then, as a result, the 8 ball moves while the cue ball stops. So, find the velocity of the 8 ball. Then, starting mass of the billboard is 0.17 kg. Assume that the motion happens in one direction. So, yung kanina, ito yung ball natin, papunta siya dito. Then, meron siyang isang ball dito. Ito yung cue ball, tapos ito yung 8 ball. Papunta siya dito, moving to the something, sabihin natin to the right or somewhere. Pwede naman to the left or to the right. Wala may indication kung saan papunta. Itong 8 ball ay nasa rest. So, kung papunta siya dyan, mag-i-strike siya dyan or magkukolide siya dyan. After niya mag-collide, itong si cue ball ay mag-i-stop. Stop siya. Sino ngayon ang gagalaw? Itong 8 ball naman ang gagalaw. Papunta dito. Now, yung problem natin has given of yung MC, sabihin na natin MC for the cue ball. The mass of the cue ball is 0.17 kg. Yung mass ng 8 ball is 0.17 kg. Bakit siya 0.17 parehas? Kasi sabi dito, the standard mass of the billiard ball is 0.17 kg. The next, we have the velocity of the cue ball, which is the initial velocity, is equal to 1.5 meter per seconds. Then after that is yung cue ball, ang magiging velocity niya, yung final is equal to 0 meter per second. Bakit 0? Kasi siya ay magtitigil once na siya ay tumama na doon kay 8 ball. Now, the initial velocity of the 8 ball is equal to 0 meter per seconds. Bakit meter per seconds? Kasi it's stated on the problem at rest. Then, ang hinahanap natin ngayon is find the velocity of the 8 ball, or the final velocity of the 8 ball. So this is our problem. Find the final velocity, or the V2 in short, of the 8 ball. Now we can solution. In solution, still, gamitin natin yung MCBCI plus M8 P8 sub I is equal to MC PCF plus M8 P8 F. Yan. Okay. Yung M na to at saka M na to ay parehas lang sila. So therefore, let's use the CMF, common monomial factor. So M, let's make this as M na lang. Then, ang natira dito is the V sub BCI, or the cue ball of the initial, and the initial velocity of the 8 ball is equal to, again, tong M na to at saka M na to ay parehas lang kasi they are 0.17. So CMF again, this will be M times VCF plus P8F. Yan. Okay na? Okay, so we are finding for B sub 8. Ito ang nahanap natin. B8 8F. Let's divide this by M. Let's divide this by M. Cancel out. Cancel out. So, nawala na yung mass. So, ano natira sa atin? We have the BCI plus P8I is equal to BCF plus N. Plus P8F. Yan. So, lipat natin ngayon ang ito. Lipat natin dito. So, magkakaroon tayo dito ng computation natin dito. Magkakaroon tayo na P8F is equal to BCI plus P8I minus PCF. So, magkakaroon yung V8 sub F is equal to, ano yung VCI natin? This will be 1.5 plus, ano yung B sub 8 natin? B initial ng nito ay 0. Ang initial nito, ang final nito ay minus 0. So, magkakaroon lang tayo ng B8. F is equal to 1.5 meter per seconds.